What's up guys, RBG here bringing you more coverage on Marvel's Avengers, and today we have some major details to go over. IGN has been doing exclusive interviews regarding this game for the month of July, and I've been doing my due diligence to elaborate on some of the things the devs have revealed. In the last video, I covered the recent beta announcement and how you could gain access. I gave brief instructions on how you could get your code, and I know there are some viewers who are concerned since they pre-ordered their copies directly from PSN, Xbox Live, and Gamestop. So I'm going to see if I can help you guys out by further elaborating on that later in the video. But the main topic we're going to be covering is regarding the combat for the Avengers members, so stay tuned. Now before we get started on the video, I got to give a huge shout out to today's sponsor, TubeBuddy. As a successful YouTube user, I often get questions asking what I use to get my videos tons of views, and the answer to that is TubeBuddy. This thing has helped me take my channel to the next level in ways I never imagined. It's a browser extension that helps new and experienced YouTubers grow fast and optimize their channels. I've been using this extension for years, and it's constantly getting updated with new features, like the SEO tool that helps me come up with the perfect title, description, and tags to get more people to click on my videos. It even provides you with analytics besides your videos to see how much traffic your video is generating from various social media sites. The extension is absolutely free, but as a special offer, we're giving a 50% discount for channels that have less than 1,000 subscribers that purchase the Pro upgrade. All you have to do is enter in the code RisingStarBuddy. So if you're interested in starting a YouTube channel or taking your content to the next level, download the extension now. You can do so by clicking on this link that'll be provided in the description of this video. But back to the topic at hand. IGN recently did an interview with the lead combat designer Vincent Napolli, and he basically went into detail on the different functionalities of each Avengers members as well as the inspirations behind some of the moves. Vincent has probably been the most vocal in regards to answering questions for Marvel's Avengers, and his most recent interactions have been on Reddit, so I'm going to combine the info I got from over there with the details from his IGN interview. The more information I can give you guys, the better, so yeah. Now the first character we have is Natasha Romanoff, who just so happens to be the first character the developers went in to work on. According to Vincent, it made the most sense to start on her gameplay first because she provides so many challenges, especially going up against some of the crazier god-powered god-tier heroes. So the team honed in on a few aspects of Black Widow to make her feel truly unique and fun to play, namely making her more agile in combat than any of the other heroes. And I think this is the smartest approach. I think Crystal Dynamics took what they learned with Lara Croft's gameplay in the rebooted Tomb Raider series and applied it to Black Widow's gameplay. Because she is the most grounded character, they can work with the most common elements such as her shooting and acrobatics, and work on the more crazier elements later such as the invisibility and other heroics she has under her belt. She's more than likely going to be one of the most elusive characters to play with, since she's said to be one of those stick and move characters who has to attack and constantly evade attacks. I remember Vincent saying on Reddit that her gameplay will encourage you to master this playstyle, since you'll be rewarded with instant reloads with the pistols after performing perfect dodges. Anyways, Vincent goes on to say, and I quote, "Black Widow is incredibly fast, she's incredibly agile, she has the fastest melee attacks and melee combos in the game. She is also able to alternate between her electric batons as heavy attacks and use those differently than her melee attacks on the light button, and switch between multiple ranged weapons as well. Some of the most interesting and fun play we see with her is the ability to enter stealth. You stealth very quickly, you get out of it and then enter it again. If you're playing her well, you do feel like you're constantly escaping the battlefield, entering the battlefield, tricking the enemies constantly. Then you add in her grapple ability to quickly move between targets, and you combine stealth, you make her this ninja on the battlefield where she's rapidly moving between enemies. You can't see her, she's disappearing, she's reappearing. Once we had all those elements in place, she definitely started to play as something really special. So this just validates what I said earlier about Widow being this extremely elusive character. I can only imagine the limitless amounts of combos I can string together with the electrical baton serving as the heavy attacks. And I'm assuming that the melee attacks will change depending on which gear she wears. Her bread and butter seems to be her invisibility heroic, which can also cloak her and any nearby team members. Since Vincent mentions that this ability will be something players can use to get out of tight situations, I'm assuming that it will have a quicker cooldown time than some of the other support heroics. But moving on, the next Avengers member we have is Captain America, who's caused quite a bit of confusion since the first trailer. Since he's allegedly bitten the bullet in the story, fans are wondering to what extent they'll be able to play with him, and how accessible he'll be during the other features such as the Warzone and Hero missions. We know he's going to ultimately return at some point, especially since Crystal Dynamics has built a deep combat system around him, and I'm assuming that since all your skill points carry over to the other characters, he'll be a force to be reckoned with by the time you get a chance to play with him again. I specifically remember Vincent mentioning in a Reddit thread that the team wanted to make it feel like his acrobatic prowess is where he derives a lot of his strength and power from in combat. And Cap seems like he's going to be a mix of Black Widow and Thor since he has agile moves along with powerful ones, not to mention his shield that'll serve as his long-range weapon. And it looks like there's going to be a lot to his shield than we thought. Vincent says, and I quote, "Throwing the shield is obviously so iconic and needed to feel so special. Cap's shield throw actually has its own built-in range combo. It's a unique characteristic that the other characters don't have, which is that his ranged attack actually works like a combo. So perfect timing as you catch it and throw it will increment his throws and create different throws and reactions on the enemies. He also has a special counter kickback, which when you use his charge throw after it hits the last enemy, if you can time the kickback ahead of time, he'll jump up and kick the shield back and meet it as it's returning, and he'll kick it back out and hit once again all the enemies that you were able to target with this charge throw." So we already knew that Cap had a lot of things going for him, such as his attacks that are equal parts agility and strength that give his combat style a unique feel. I initially thought that his shield would be an extension of his melee attacks with a few things going for it, but it looks like this thing is gonna have a moveset of its own. Just looking at his 8A footage, which was relatively tame, you can tell that there's a lot going on with it, from these certain visual cues like the shield glowing red or white. Like, I'm not sure if those are buffs after you perform some of his heroics, but there's something going on when he does that. The fact that this thing has ranged attacks that work as combos and the whole catching and throwing at the right time tells me that Cap is going to be a momentum based character, which I absolutely love. Like, those are the type of characters I enjoy playing with the most. Characters who have this huge learning curve that will be the most fun once you've mastered them. The counter kickback Vincent mentioned seems like it's going to be one of those things that's so fulfilling after you pull it off, and it looks like it's going to completely steamroll a lot of nearby enemies. I hope I can perform this thing as many times as I want, as long as I time the kicks right. The developers have already mentioned that Cap is like the owner of the battlefield when played correctly. Like, he's all about precision-based crowd control, and mastering all the moves with his shield is going to give you that advantage. But anyways, next up is the Hulk. This is a character that I think everyone has associated his gameplay with his solo game, Ultimate Destruction. And according to this interview, Vincent actually went back and played that particular game for inspiration, but he and the team wanted to put their own unique twist on the character. Like, I doubt he's gonna have everything under the kitchen sink, like the ability to literally skate on cars, but I do suspect him to be more realistic within this world Crystal has created. According to IGN, their main objective was to see how they could imbue his force of strength with strategy. Vincent says, and I quote, "Other than being able to utilize his rage and smash through stuff and feel that overwhelming sense of power, what would my gameplay strategy be as Hulk? What would a realistic gameplay strategy be as him if you were a Hulk player? What if we took the idea of weaponization? Hulk is basically all about weaponizing the environment and weaponizing the enemies, or weaponizing the combat scenario around him. And what I mean by that is that that's actually why he's able to pick up and wield enemies as weapons. I'm going to prepare at the beginning of this fight because I'm going to rip up part of the ground and turn it into a giant boulder. And then I'm going to start the fight by leaping off the highest thing I can and dive bomb into the fight with my giant boulder. And for example, using status effects, you can make that a cosmic infused boulder. You can radiate the boulder with gamma. So after reading this, I'm getting the feeling that the Hulk is going to be a very experimental character that rewards preparation. The players are going to be given the freedom to create crazy scenarios using his grappling system, which in all honesty I wasn't feeling at first, since I'd rather see Hulk punch or pound someone. Like, the most we've seen him do is grab nearby enemies or environments and use them as melee weapons. But after finding out that this grappling system is going to feature these insane payoffs after pulling something off like Hulk's Gamma Crush from Marvel vs. Capcom, I'm feeling very optimistic about it, and I'm eager to see to what level they're going to go with this. If the melee grapple attacks change depending on who or what you grab, am I going to be able to grab an enemy soldier and robot and slam them together? Or are there going to be different outcomes other than the typical slam? Like, these are things I'm wondering about. I'm also wondering to what extent I can fully utilize all the different miscellaneous items you can actually pick up. Something I wouldn't mind having is the ability to grab a cannon off of a tank and use it like a baseball bat. And then there's the whole concept of infusing things like gamma and other gear attributes. If Hulk's grappling system goes this deep, then he's going to be a super fun character to play around with. But moving along, the next character we have is Iron Man, a character I was the most concerned about in regards to how the developers were going to fully realize his capabilities. Considering the fact that there are no other games that have nailed this aspect and that it's a pretty tall order, I couldn't really wrap my mind around how Crystal Dynamics was going to do it. Iron Man has a huge iconography, including things like the comics and MCU films, so the team behind this game has their work cut out for them. But Vincent has reassured us and gone on record about how Iron Man's filmography has allowed the team to figure out their take on Tony Stark. He says, and I quote, What if Iron Man could use his weapon selection, not just in his range attacks, but integrate that into melee combat? Really make that a part of who he is. That way you can see him do a lot more of the iconic posing that you see in the movies and comic panels. And once we had that down, I was like, well, let's do something with the lasers. Let's give him 24 laser attacks that he could use in melee combat. So for example, his heavy combo finisher you can unlock is a pinning missile, which pins the enemy and takes them off and propels them into the air, and then does different like loops and runs different patterns and sends them flying. Now this is what I was hoping Vince would elaborate on the most, because you guys have heard me talk about how far the development team was going to go with Iron Man's melee attacks. This guy is probably going to be the most complex because not only does he have light and heavy ground-based melee attacks, he also has light and heavy aerial attacks as well. And these things are going to continue to change based on the gear you equip on him. It kind of has me wondering if these moves change depending on the distance the enemy is from you, because you see him using most of his light and heavy attacks as ranged projectiles. If you ask me, I think it would be cool if those moves occasionally change to punches and kicks when he's close to enemies. According to IGN, Vincent estimates that there are about 36 different attacks incorporating his ranged moves, which can be brought into combos that focus on his standard hand-to-hand combat abilities. So I guess that just answered my question. But that's a pretty hefty amount of moves if you ask me. Like, I could go on and on about how advanced this guy's combat is going to be, but we'll be here all day, man. This video is already going to be a pain to edit, so let's just move on to the other characters. Next up is Kamala Khan, aka Ms. Marvel. Vincent says that her abilities for a melee game are a dream and a curse at the same time, because you can do anything with them. You can make any weapon attacks and motions with them, but at the same time you can do anything with them. He goes further into detail about how Kamala's in-universe fandom for the other Avengers members aided the team in coming up with some of her moves, saying, and I quote, "So you'll notice Kamala's got a version of Black Widow's light trip kick where she sweeps the enemies. She's got a version of Hulk's shoulder ram attack. She's got a version of almost every character's attack with the Kamala spin on it, just to give it that feel of she's learning. And where would she be learning from? Where would she actually draw inspiration from? Of course, it'd be from the other Avengers members." Now, I gotta be honest with you guys, I wasn't too hyped about this particular segment of the interview. Don't get me wrong, I'm more than stoked to play with Kamala Khan in Marvel's Avengers. She's gonna have some crazy looking combat, especially with the way it's gonna change when you use her embiggen abilities. But I don't really care about hearing that she's gonna have some fangirl moves. I kinda already knew she would, since it's a core component to her character. We get it, she's an Avengers superfan. You can even hear her yelling out Hulk's famous line as she demolishes an AIM robot. I would have much preferred to hear more about things like her traversal or some of her other heroic abilities, so yeah. But anyways, the last Avenger we're going to talk about is the mighty Thor, a character who I think we all know that Vincent was going to have a blast with given his experience with Kratos' gameplay from God of War 2018. When you combine the popular Leviathan axe mechanics with other components like Thor's extensive lore such as the comics and movies, you're going to have endless possibilities, man. Vincent mentions the scene in Thor Ragnarok where Odin tells Thor that he's not the god of hammers. The coolest thing about his combat is that you can trigger his Odin force that Thor can use to electrify himself, protect himself, and counter enemies. But it also has a unique property that adds to every single one of his attacks, and it isn't just as simple as, oh, it just adds lightning damage. It completely changes the impact or the effect that it will have on the enemy, so you can see what it does and modify each of his attacks. You can change Mjolnir into his lob grenade style toss where it creates a lightning explosion and creates cluster bombs, or you can change it into the ability to seek out targets in the battlefield, which is not the way its base throw works. After hearing this, we now know that Thor is going to have some pretty diverse mechanics when it comes to his zoning. In one of his most recent comments on Reddit, Vincent mentions that it's possible to pin multiple enemies, and that his heroic abilities can be used without his hammer. I couldn't think how he could pull this off at first, but after hearing him go into detail of how Thor can essentially use lightning from the Odin Force as a defensive and offensive maneuver, I believe that it's going to be the other tool you can use to pin multiple enemies down. I could be wrong about that, but it's what I'm assuming. But that's all I have for you guys regarding the combat for the Avengers members. Now I want to get back on the topic of the open beta that'll be launching on August the 7th. I explained how you needed to pre-order Marvel's Avengers through a Square Enix account, but unfortunately there were those who had already pre-ordered it through other things, whether it be online stores such as PSN or physical retailers like Gamestop. I've tried to reach out to the developers and production team to get some help on this issue, but I never got any replies. I did, however, get some interactions with certain people who supposedly had this issue but rectified it. I had one individual say that if you pre-ordered from a store like GameStop, you'd have to get in contact with them, letting them know that you ordered the game and that you needed an activation key for the beta. They'd send you the key through email and you simply have to create a Square Enix account to enter it. I've also heard if you pre-order from PSN, Xbox Live, or Steam, you receive an email from said platform giving you the code before the beta's launch. If you pre-order from either of these stores, I personally recommend that you still make a Square Enix account and link your PSN, etc. Like, I honestly can't say if any of these ideas will work, but I do recommend trying to be on the safe side. I really want everyone to gain access to the beta, especially if they put in pre-orders, but I don't want to mislead anyone with false hope. Also, I just want to clarify that nobody has received a beta code yet. I know there are some pages claiming to have gotten the codes, but Square hasn't even emailed the codes yet, and probably won't do so until close to the preload dates, so yeah. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys today. What do you think about all the combat details? Did anything pique your interest, or was the info lackluster? Let me know in the comments below. As always, I ask you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback, will only help me improve on future videos. But if you really enjoyed the video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and followers on social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.
Just need to reassemble.
A new Avengers game? Hey, get ready to assemble for this one, true believers.